The silence before the storm, the wind on Oryx 9 didn't blow. It hummed, like an old lullaby trapped between metal buildings and dusty sky domes. Lieutenant Kara Solis felt it brushing against her suit as she walked the open lanes of the refugee sector, her boots thudding gently on steel plates that had once gleamed but were now dull with age and desperation. She stopped at a ruined fountain, where a group of alien children played. Their thin arms and large eyes reminded her of the paintings back on Earth, back when humanity first joined the Interstellar Alliance and believed peace could last forever. The kids were laughing real laughter, and it filled Kara's chest with something warm. She bent down, pulled a ration bar from her pack, and gave it to the smallest one. "Thank you," the child whispered, voice trembling. Kara smiled. "We don't stop being kind, even when it's hard." But things were hard. Something dark had been building for weeks. She could feel it in the way the guards stiffened at meetings, in the way the news broadcasts spoke too carefully, always dancing around the truth, and in the way Commander Voss had avoided her eyes that morning when she asked about the rumors that the Threxian fleet was coming again. No one knew why. Humans had kept every treaty, sent aid to every burned world, forgiven every insult, but the Threxians were ancient and proud. And they'd always hated how humans could survive without domination, how they could lead without fear. Kara stood up, her gaze shifting to the edge of the sky dome where stars blinked in the distance. Her cum crackled softly. "Lieutenant Solis, report to command. Urgent update." She tapped her earpiece. "On my way." As she walked toward the transport bay, a strange silence settled inside her. Not fear, not dread, something deeper. Like the pause before a great storm. Like the moment when a violin holds a note just a second too long. She passed a group of alien merchants. They nodded respectfully, not because of her rank, but because she had treated them with care. She had shared food, helped lift wreckage, listened to stories when no one else would, and it mattered. It had always mattered. The command center was buried deep beneath the city. Metal doors hissed open, and Kara stepped inside. The air was thick with urgency. Officers spoke in hushed voices. A hologram of the outer system blinked red in 3 sectors. "They broke the line," Voss said quietly, not even looking up. "We tried to contact their diplomats. They're not responding. They're targeting humanitarian zones first." Kara's blood ran cold. "They're coming for the kindest places first," she whispered. Voss finally looked at her, tired, hollow. "They think kindness is weakness." Kara didn't respond. She just stood there, eyes on the map, her heart beating faster, not with panic but with something sharp. Something rising. Behind her, the lights dimmed. Outside, the stars seemed to draw closer. The silence hummed again. But it no longer felt like a lullaby. It felt like a warning, and deep inside Kara Solis, something ancient stirred. Something humans hadn't needed in centuries. But maybe it was time. The kindness they mistook for weakness. Halls of Central Command were heavy with silence, the kind that wasn't natural. It was forced, clenched between jaws and held in lungs too afraid to exhale. Lieutenant Kara Solis walked past a row of officers, their faces pale, eyes flicking to the massive hologram showing the Threxian fleet advancing slow, deliberate, like a beast stalking prey it no longer feared. Kara stopped in front of a screen that showed live footage from Sector 12. It was a quiet farming world where humans and alien settlers had worked side by side for nearly 2 generations. She had visited it once, helped dig irrigation channels with her bare hands during a drought. Children had danced barefoot in the mud while she laughed beside them. Now, the screen showed smoke. "How many survivors?" she asked softly. A nearby officer, his voice shaking, replied, "None. They hit the colony before evacuation. No weapons, no resistance. It was supposed to be protected. Kara's hands clenched at her sides. Her nails dug into her palms. Humans had stayed kind, even when others grew bitter. Even when betrayal came like a slow drip over the decades. They chose diplomacy over vengeance, aid over armament. They had believed the universe could be better, but the Threxians didn't want better. They wanted surrender. Kara stepped into the briefing chamber. Commander Voss stood near the table, looking older than usual. Several council members appeared as holograms, faces flickering under the weight of panic and politics. "We can't win a war with them," one counselor muttered. "We never prepared for this. They outnumber us, outgun us." "We were never meant to outgun anyone," Kara said. "We were meant to outlast them." Eyes turned to her. "We built trust, alliances, friendships across species. We've helped raise broken worlds. The galaxy watched us be kind when it made no sense to be kind." Voss's voice was low. "You think kindness will save us now?" "No," Kara said, stepping forward. "But I think it gave us something they don't understand." She placed a data crystal on the table. The hologram shifted. New images filled the air. Alien captains pledging loyalty to Earth's diplomats. Neutral systems offering sanctuary to human refugees. Scattered fleets once thought disbanded, secretly rallying. "They've mistaken our kindness for softness." Kara continued, "But kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means discipline. It means strength with restraint. And now—" She took a breath. "Now we stop holding back." Voss studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "What's your plan?" "We hit where it hurts," Kara said. "Not their weapons. Their pride, their certainty. We show them something they've never seen before." "Which is?" Kara looked out the window toward the stars, her voice quiet but sharp. "A human who stops being gentle." Later that night, in the barracks, Kara sat alone at the edge of her cot. Her fingers ran over the edge of a small wooden token tied to her belt, a gift from an alien child long ago, carved with the symbol of peace. Her heart ached as she stared at it. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the memory. "But they left. U.S. no choice." Outside, the skies over Oryx 9 turned darker. Ships gathered, silent and ready. Messages went out to old allies. Old debts called in. Far beyond the galaxy's core, something shifted. The humans had stayed kind for centuries, but now the stars would see what happened when they didn't. The spark they never saw coming. The attack on Sector 12 wasn't just a tragedy. It was a message. The Threxians wanted the galaxy to watch, to see fire fall on peaceful homes, to remind every species that kindness couldn't stop destruction. But the galaxy didn't react the way the Threxians expected. On the edge of the Novar Belt, a convoy of neutral ships broke silence and turned toward Earth space. Captains who once refused to choose sides now lit their engines for war. On the frozen world of Illyrith, a monk-like people who had never raised a weapon sent a single coded message. "We will stand with the kind dot in the refugee wards of Oryx 9. Alien families began sewing Earth's emblem into their clothing, 3 stars and an open hand. It was a symbol of trust, of humanity's quiet strength. And now it was becoming something else. Kara Solis watched it unfold from command, her heart torn in 2 directions. She didn't want revenge, but this was no longer just about humans. It was about everyone who believed mercy was still worth something. "Update from the Outer Rim," a tech officer called out. "The Threxians just destroyed another hospital ship. No survivors." The room fell silent. Kara's jaw tightened. "Was it marked?" "Clearly. All beacons active," Voss spoke slowly. "They want to provoke us, to make us angry enough to slip, to forget who we are." Kara nodded. "Then we'll give them what they want, but not how they expect." She turned toward her team. Prepare the hidden fleet. We're activating protocol silence. Eyes widened across the room. Protocol silence was never meant to be used. It was built decades ago, kept buried in forgotten systems. It was the human response to extinction-level threats. A fleet of hybrid vessels built in secret, powered by both technology and empathy-based. Command systems. Machines that could learn from pain, react to emotion, and act in ways even the most advanced enemies couldn't predict. As ships launched from hidden stations, Kara walked the hangar floor. Crews from across the galaxy lined up, waiting for assignment. Some had lost homes. Others had lost families. But every face shared the same quiet rage. A Threxian prisoner, captured during a failed infiltration, watched from a secure chamber. When Kara approached, he sneered. "You finally crawl out of your caves, human?" Kara stared at him through the glass. "You think we're just crawling out," she said. "But the truth is, we've been watching, waiting, hoping we wouldn't have to show you what kindness was protecting you from." The prisoner laughed. "You? Fight us? You're known for handshakes and charity drives." "Yes," Kara replied. "And those hands that gave food can also pull triggers." The prisoner's grin faltered. Kara leaned in. "We didn't forget how to be strong. We chose to be gentle." Then she turned and walked away. Outside, the hidden fleet shimmered into real space. Hundreds of ships, quiet and dark, powered by the will of billions who had stayed patient for too long. Each ship was crewed not just by soldiers, but by farmers, teachers, healers, people who had spent their lives lifting others. They had never asked for war. But now they would end one, not for revenge, but to remind the galaxy what humanity really was and why it had chosen kindness in the first place. The day Mercy took up arms, the stars above Oryx 9 shimmered unnaturally as the hidden fleet activated its cloaking fields. Kara Solis stood at the center of the command deck, surrounded by a quiet hum, the sound of 1,000 choices finally moving into motion. Around her, human and alien officers worked shoulder to shoulder, speaking softly, efficiently. There was no yelling, no panic. Only purpose. Deep in her chest, Kara still felt the ache of what was being lost. Not just peace, but the illusion that peace alone could protect them. She had always believed kindness was the highest form of strength, and she still did. But now she understood something more painful. Strength also meant drawing a line and daring the darkness to cross it. A transmission crackled through. Incoming message from the Threxian fleet. "It's a challenge." Kara raised an eyebrow. "Put it through." The air shimmered, and a Threxian warlord appeared, tall, scaled, eyes glowing with cruel amusement. "Humans," he hissed. "You were never warriors. You were caretakers. Dreamers. Weak. We gave you a chance to surrender, and now your gentle colonies burn." Kara didn't flinch. She met his stare with calm. "And yet here we stand, not broken, not afraid, and not alone," the warlord growled. "You bring doctors to a battlefield." Kara leaned forward. "Yes, and they'll stitch together what you tear apart. And when this is over, they'll heal the ones you left for dead, even yours. Because we remember what you forgot. We are human." The warlord ended the transmission without a word. Kara turned to the crew. "Activate Phase 1. Across the stars, the hidden fleet moved, but they didn't attack first. Instead, they arrived in silence at the edges of recently destroyed systems, rebuilt signal towers, recovered floating escape pods, and dropped emergency supplies to survivors. Every ship bore the same symbol, 3 stars and an open hand, and the galaxy watched. Even the enemies did, because this wasn't war the way the Threxians had planned. This was resistance born from compassion. Kara's ship, the Verity, moved. into position near the ruins of Sector 12. Debris still floated in space, silent and grim. Among it, they found a single survivor, a child, barely breathing, wrapped in the emergency foil of a destroyed escape pod. Her skin was scorched. Her breathing shallow. Kara personally pulled her from the wreckage. "You're safe now," she whispered. The child opened one swollen eye and croaked a single word. "Why did they hate us?" Kara swallowed hard. "Because you made them feel small, just by being good." The medical crew rushed the child away. As the Verity turned toward its next destination, Kara stood at the window, fingers brushing the glass. She knew what was coming. The Threxians would strike again, angrier, louder, more brutal than before. And when they did, they would face not a raging army, but a wall of quiet resolve, not warriors eager for blood, but protectors who finally understood that kindness alone could not hold back monsters forever. They would face humans who remembered every mercy denied. And chose to fight not with hatred, but with unshakable purpose. The scream that shook the stars attack came sooner than expected. 3 Threxian dreadships ripped through the outer system, targeting human relief stations that had only just begun to rebuild. They didn't ask questions. They didn't issue warnings. They fired into hospitals, leveled clean water plants, and vaporized a cargo vessel filled with blankets, medicine, and children. But this time, the humans didn't just survive, they answered. The Verity arrived through a slingshot jump, bursting into real space just as the Threxians turned their sights on a terraforming colony. Kara Solis stood tall on the bridge, her voice steady as she gave the command. "All vessels shield the colony. Begin countermeasures. No lethal force unless provoked." Around her, officers worked with calm precision. Not one of them shouted. No one cursed the enemy. This wasn't rage. It was something colder, something rooted in heartbreak. The Threxians were ready for battle. But they weren't ready for how humans fought. Karen's fleet didn't fire blindly. They protected first. Then they isolated the dreadships with gravitational traps designed not to destroy but to pause. They jammed enemy signals with frequencies composed of voices, actual messages from the victims of earlier attacks. One Threxian commander, hearing the cries of children echo through his controls, faltered. His ship shuddered. He hesitated. And in that pause, a human boarding vessel slipped inside the dreadship's hangar. They didn't bring bombs. They brought truth. Kara herself stepped onto that enemy ship, flanked by medics and engineers. Smoke filled the halls. Alarms blared. The Threxians aimed weapons, but they didn't fire. Not when they saw what Kara held in her arms. The child from Sector 12. Still healing. Barely standing. But there, wrapped in a medical blanket, she looked at the Threxian guards and asked in her soft, hoarse voice, "Why did you try to kill me?" The hallway fell silent. Kara's voice followed. "You fear what you don't understand. But look at her. She's not your enemy. She's just a child, one you tried to erase because her kindness made you feel weak." A Threxian captain stepped forward, claws twitching. "We followed orders." "Then break them," Kara said, "before there's nothing left to honor." 4. A long moment. No one moved. Then one of the Threxian soldiers lowered his weapon, and everything changed. Other dreadships across the system suddenly found their own crews hesitating. Some turned back. Some stopped responding. A message spread not through weapons, but through choice. One captain choosing to listen. One crew choosing not to fire. The galaxy trembled not from war, but from awakening. Kindness had not died. It had waited. And now it spoke with the voice of a small child, and a human who refused to hate. When Kara returned to the Verity, her hand shook, not from fear, but from the weight of what might come next. The tide was turning. But tides never turn without cost. How many more? She whispered to herself, how many more before they truly understand? Outside the window, the stars seemed to blink slower, gentler, but something stirred beyond them. The Threxian High. War Council had seen the footage, and they were not pleased. They weren't afraid of fleets. They were afraid of Hope. And now, that hope had a face. When Hope became a weapon, Kara Solis stood in the command chamber of the Verity, staring at the star map as the lights flickered across enemy and allied systems. Something impossible was happening. Worlds that had stayed neutral for decades were now requesting alliances. Old enemies were reaching out to Earth with cautious offers of truce. And the unlikeliest message of all had just come in from Deep Threxian space. A surrender. Not from the High War Council, but from a fleet captain. They're defecting? Voss asked, his voice thick with disbelief. Kara nodded slowly. They saw the footage, the child, our refusal to bomb them. They said they were raised to believe kindness was weakness. But now they think maybe they were lied to. Voss exhaled, like he had been holding his breath for years, but the moment of calm didn't last. Alert, new Threxian signal detected. The comms officer said, her voice tight. It's massive. We've never seen this configuration. Kara turned. Location? Coming straight for Oryx 9 ETA. 10 hours. A heavy silence settled across the bridge. Voss spoke first. The High War Council. Kara's heart pounded. They're coming to crush the symbol, not the army. Oryx 9 had become more than a base. It had become a beacon. And the Council wanted to extinguish it before the rest of the galaxy believed too deeply in humanity's way. Evacuate civilians, Kara ordered, and prepare the fleet. No one else dies protecting peace. Hours passed in quiet urgency. Ships moved in coordinated silence. Families were escorted to escape vessels. Refugees cried as they begged to stay and help. Kara stopped one old alien man who had wrapped a human emblem around his shoulders. Please, he said. This place gave me food when my world gave me nothing. Let me protect it. Kara looked at him for a long time. Then stand with us, not behind us. In orbit, the human fleet joined by allies from 3 systems formed a tight wall around the planet. It was not the biggest force, not the most advanced, but every ship held something the Threxians didn't understand. Purpose. When the enemy arrived, the stars disappeared. The Threxian flagship was unlike anything ever seen. Part living organism, part machine, pulsing with crimson energy. It dwarfed everything they hailed once. Submit. Kara answered, no. The sky exploded. Beams of energy lanced toward the defenders. Shields flared. Hulls cracked. Screams echoed through comms. But the human fleet did not fall back. They shielded each other. They moved like one organism, fluid, reactive, resilient. Child from Sector 12, now fully healed, sat in the lower decks, sending out voice messages to allied systems. Her words, soft and clear, reached a dozen neutral worlds. We are not fighting to win. We are fighting to protect. Her message became a signal flare. More ships began jumping in. From old allies, from former enemies, from strangers who had only watched from the dark corners of the galaxy, now drawn to the one thing that had been missing for so long. Hope. On the command deck, Kara watched as the tide began to turn, not through destruction, but through unity. We hold the line, she said softly. Voss stepped beside her. We don't just hold it, he replied. We are the line. The Threxian flagship struck again, blasting a massive allied cruiser. But before it could deliver the final blow, 3 smaller ships, human, Eliran, and even a defected Threxian vessel surged forward and intercepted the fire. Together. And That's when the flagship hesitated. Inside its walls, Threxian generals watched as ship after ship shielded each other, not for glory, not for power, but out of belief. And belief, they realized, was far harder to destroy than metal. Kara opened a channel to every vessel in orbit. This is not about who fires the biggest shot, she said. This is about who refuses to stop protecting others, no matter the cost. And then, for the first time in known galactic history, a battlefield went quiet, not because the weapons failed, but because the attackers stopped. Watching. Listening. Because kindness had not just survived, that it had become contagious. The kindness that conquered everything. The battlefield above Oryx 9 drifted in eerie silence. Ships floated, some damaged, some still aiming their weapons, but none firing. The human fleet stood at the front, shields holding, engines pulsing low, ready for the next attack. But none came. Kara Solis stood in the center of the Verity's bridge, her hand hovering over the command console. Around her, officers stared at their screens, waiting for orders, waiting for war to start again. But the war wasn't starting. Something else was. A message came through. Not from a ship, not from a soldier, but from the Threxian High War Council itself. Kara gave a small nod. Put it on screen. The light shimmered. Then a massive horned Threxian leader appeared, his armor scarred, his expression unreadable. His voice was low and growling. We believed fear ruled all things. We believed strength was the only language. But today, you showed us another. Kara said nothing. The Threxian continued. We have seen species fall from power. We have crushed empires. But never have we seen this. Ships risking themselves for strangers. Warriors shielding the weak. Medics healing even the wounded enemy. He paused. Your kindness is not weakness. It is something we do not have a word for. Kara stepped forward. Then find one. And teach it to your children. The Threxian bowed his head. Just slightly. And the transmission ended. A quiet gasp escaped from somewhere on the bridge. They're retreating. Someone whispered. Kara turned to the view window. The massive Threxian fleet, once a mountain of fire and shadow, began to shift. Ships pulled back. Some powered down their weapons entirely. Others sent signals not of surrender, but of respect. Around Oryx 9, Allied ships cheered. Messages flooded in. Voices from 100 species offering support, asking for peace talks, pledging unity. But Kara didn't smile. Not yet. She moved quietly through the halls of the Verity, checking in on the wounded. She sat beside a young engineer who had lost, her arm saving a medic. She helped clean the bruises of a Threxian defector who had taken a blade protecting a human child. And later, she stood once more before the council. We didn't win because we fought harder, she said. We won because we remembered who we were when it would have been easier to forget. The council asked what came next. Kara gave them a single word: rebuild. And so they did. In the days that followed, something remarkable began to spread. Across the galaxy, not flags, not armies, not dominion. But kindness. True kindness. The kind that carries food to strangers. The kind that sits beside an enemy and listens. The kind that risks everything not to conquer, but to protect. Refugees once scattered returned home. Worlds once divided joined hands. Even the Threxians, slow and quiet, began to change. Not all, not right away, but it began. And humans? Humans became more than just members of the Alliance. They became its heart, because when the galaxy pushed them to abandon their values, they stood firm. When cruelty struck, they refused to become cruel in return. And when the universe asked if kindness still had a place in a world filled with war, the humans answered without a single word. They just showed up. Again and again, until even the stars listened. Kara Solis. once just a soldier in a forgotten sector, became a legend. Not because she led fleets or made speeches, but because she never stopped believing that gentleness could hold its ground, even against monsters, and win.